Now, what I'm going to do is introduce our moderator, Karan Mehandru. Karan is a general partner at Trinity Ventures, which she joined in 2010. Karan focuses on investments in SaaS, big data, cloud computing, and mobile. Prior to Trinity, Karan was at Scale Ventures, where he focused on growth stage investments. He is originally from Vancouver and is now based here in the Bay Area and is also a C100 charter member. Karan, thank you so much for contributing to today's discussion and for helping us have a great discussion with our data founders. I will turn it over to you.
Well, thanks everyone, and thanks for joining. Thank you, Megan, for organizing this and making sure that we can all stay connected to our C100 family, even though we're all sitting in different parts of the globe. I wish that we could all meet in person, but I'm sure we'll get to those days soon if we can all help it. I want to thank the panelists who will be introducing themselves in a couple of minutes here. I'll give you a quick background on myself beyond what Megan just mentioned, which is all true. Been at Trinity for the last 10 years. I lead our enterprise investments. We're an early stage venture firm. It's a $400 million fund. It's our 12th fund currently. And we've been technology investors since 1986. And as Megan mentioned, I'm from Vancouver. I actually went to school in undergrad in Ottawa and Carleton University, and then moved out to Vancouver. And then moved to Portland, Oregon, where I spent a few more years on the operating side. So I was in the operating world for about 10 years. And then after that, I moved into venture in 2007. So super excited to be here and super excited to be having this conversation and getting a chance to introduce 4 people that are a lot more talented than I am. And so with that, I'd love to introduce the panelists. We have Dan, Andrew, Morgan, and Tim. Maybe start with Dan. Dan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
A bit of your personal story, how you started the company, why you started the company, what problem you're trying to solve. And just for fun, maybe one company besides yourself that you look up to as a role model or somebody that you want to emulate or want to grow up to become.
Sure.
Why don't you take it away, Dan?
All right, to everyone. So I'm Dan DeMers. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cinchy. Cinchy is based out of Toronto, where I was born and raised in different suburbs, as well as sometimes in the core. My parents had a tendency to move every couple of years. We just passed 40 people. We actually closed our Series A round in the middle of May, just after the start of the pandemic, which was definitely tons of fun. The kind of the backstory is I come from a world of big banks where I worked in IT. I spent 11 years at Citigroup. That's where I met my co-founder, where we were building pretty complicated global banking systems, and saw a huge opportunity to have a huge impact in simplifying that. So we created the platform that we brought to market about 2 years ago. We've had some pretty good growth. Cinchy is a software platform, and it's used by enterprise organizations to uniquely manage all of their data as a network, which is radically different than the conventional approach. So just think of how the internet works, but now imagine that for data. It uniquely eliminates the need for integration, which for 40 years has consumed half of the IT budget of every company on the planet. And the design, one of the things that I think that is quite novel about the platform is it's actually using the human brain as a design muse. Our brains are amazing machines. Your brains each manage more data than the biggest, most complicated company on the entire planet. And what I think is the most interesting fact is it's not just adding new rows of data into a fixed rigid data model. Your brain is reorganizing itself as it learns. It's neuroplasticity. And that continues from birth all the way up until the end of our lives. And it's what differentiates your current intellectual capability versus the day you were born. It's an amazing phenomena, but it's never really been applied in an enterprise context or frankly, even in a software context. So that's what our platform does, is it enables plasticity of an enterprise data model to create essentially the foundation for enterprise intelligence.
Thank you, Dan. Who wants to go now? Let's go with the beatapp founders, Andrew and Morgan. Andrew, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I'm Andrew, one of the co-founders of beatapp with Morgan. We help music labels and artists track their songs to collect royalties. The way it works today is that a streaming service, think Spotify, Apple, whoever, they self-report their own numbers and tell the labels, this is how many times the song's been played. Please invoice us for your pro rata share of subscription fees and advertising revenue. And what's happened over the last few years is labels started auditing streaming services and going in and pulling the server logs and matching them to the reports they were given. And it turns out that on average, those reports that they invoice off of every month are between 10 and 15% underreported. And that's led to a $4 billion problem for the music industry. And so Morgan and I had a customer, our first customer actually, a large label, come to us towards the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, and say, can you build us something for auditing these streams in real time? And we really spent the first 18 months in stealth mode building the underlying technology capable of processing all of those streams, verifying them, and creating that third-party trusted source of truth for play counts. So that's really what we are. We're like a PwC for play count. We don't collect money. We don't make payments. We have 50 plus labels signed and a number of DSPs going live. And we're sort of I think we're the market leader in this space. And as Morgan will allude to, we're basically the SoundScan for digital. So what SoundScan did in the 1990s for retail music, we're now doing for streaming services.
Morgan, anything more interesting stuff to add on the company? And also would love to hear about your background and how you guys, and one of the interesting things about your company that is different than others is you both are co-CEOs. So maybe just talk a little bit how that came to be.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew kind of nailed it on the company side. We'll get deeper into it as the panel goes on. By way of background, so I grew up in Summerland, British Columbia, moved out to Ottawa and started my life in consulting, which is where I got introduced to the music industry. Specifically copyright. So working on a couple of files, extending copyright in Canada from 50 to 70 years in budget 2015. And then I went in-house to a telco for a while and then moved to California. Andrew and I met in grad school. And I think always sort of from the first projects we worked on together, just realized we worked well together. And so even after sort of grad school, we spent time just finding opportunities to work together, whether it was campaigns or helping friends with whatever project they were working on, and that sort of, I think, to your point about splitting the sort of top job at beatapp, it was kind of a no-brainer. We'd been doing it for a while, and we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses pretty darn well at that point, and we just realized that if we were going to make a run at this, we wanted to do it together, and it's worked really well. It's been a happy marriage. So I think we're really fortunate that we got to know each other well and had a strong foundation of being close before starting the company, and that's made, I think, all the difference. A company I admire, I worked there, just a little bit of inside baseball, but I really like TELUS. I just think they've been ahead of the curve on sort of plotting the next evolution of what a telco can be, getting into healthcare when everyone else got into sports and media. And so I've always admired sort of their long-term vision and the way they've sort of attacked their strategy.
Great. Thanks, Morgan. Tim, you're up next. And by the way, I should mention, if folks have questions that they want to ask the panelists, please just write them on chat. I might call upon you, or I can read the questions as well. But don't wait for the right moment. Just put them in there, and I'll ask them as we have this discussion. Sorry, Tim, you're all yours.
No problem. So I'm Tim Renya. I'm the CEO of Smart Access and founder. John White is also here, who is founder and head of product. We are located in Edmonton. There are 17 of us on the team, probably growing here shortly to 20. But we build a workforce productivity platform that supports the deskless worker in the retail world. And so our technology boosts worker productivity and reduces turnover with rapid onboarding and reskilling of workers. And we do that by thinking from the ground floor, meaning we think about the context that the worker is in and make sure that those moments that action happens, that we're right there. And so building that platform to support what many organizations have unbundled, the different tasks and functions in a retail organization, which is great, but they've made it complicated as they've done so. And so we, through context and placing learning connection points throughout an environment, then that user gets the best information to do their job and reduces that time to action. John, I don't know if you have anything you want to say about why we started the company, but we kind of John and I started out in DVD rental kiosks, and we're obviously on the wrong side of that trend as it turned out to change around. And then we got into automated retail. But the thing that really struck us as we started growing and changing our perspective on the world was we look at the bureaucracy that comes within large organizations. And we just think that at the level of the worker on the floor, that we can probably do some good work and cut out some of that middle management fat. And we can do that through technology and getting direct connections to the people that actually do the work and deliver the brand's promise. And so that's kind of why we started Smart Access, is to support those people. And the company I admire, who I hope someday will buy this company, but Zebra Technologies is a company that I like. They make devices, but they're kind of beginning to end or end to end, supporting retail organizations and also manufacturing and others. And so I admire that company for what they've done, and they continue to have incredible growth and smart products.
Great. Well, thanks for that intro. And maybe I'll ask all of you one question that I tend to ask. It's a bit of more of a provocative question when I hear pitches, but I asked you guys about what companies you admire. Let me flip that around and see if one of you wants to answer. If you do your job right and everything goes to glory, what is the one company that exists today that you would most like to wipe out? Andrew, I think you want to answer first. I can tell by that smile.
I'm afraid to answer.
No, it's what you should answer. It's actually a real question I ask a lot of companies.
Nielsen. I think Nielsen does sampling and doesn't do census. We have the ability in the technological age to actually track every single stream or transaction of a stream or media stream. And I think that, if I were Nielsen, I'd be looking at beatapp, wondering how we can partner quickly. So I think that similar to the way that they revolutionize an industry, I think if in our ideal state, we become the new one.
Got it. I don't know if other folks have any strong opinions on that question.
I think we would want to take out SAP. They have such a strong hold, and their growth in the way they work, and they're complicated. And so I think our mentality of starting from the floor and pushing up is one that I think that they would not really see coming. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I find your desire to take out SAP a lot more aspirational than your desire to be bought by Zebra, just from an investor's perspective.
That's okay. I get it though.
Dan?
For us, it's not so much one company, it's more an entire business model. So the way that applications are built today is I'm going to trick you with functionality, and you're going to give me control over your data. And I'm going to trap it behind a paywall. And what we're doing is separating data from the app so that you can get control over that. So there's a whole lot of companies, let's say all, that generally try and make money off of trapping people's data. So it's changing the entire model so that apps of the future need to earn their keep by adding value and capability, but not by secretly trapping your data.
Got it.
So let's say every company.
Okay, well, that's even more aspirational. So Dan, while we're on you, you said you raised Series A in the middle of a pandemic. So first off, congrats on that. It's hard enough to raise money in general. It's almost impossible when you can't meet people face to face, especially when you're early stage and people want to see you and kind of get a sense of what working with you would be like for the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about sort of any tactics or strategies that worked well, or things that used to work well but don't work well while raising money during a pandemic when everybody is virtual? Something that all of us could learn.
Yeah, I think for me, because we started we had heard of COVID, but it wasn't, everyone was still going to the office. It didn't seem like a big deal. And we just kind of kicked off the process, and that's when everything hit the fan. So I think one of the things that it did for us, which I think is good in the end, is it forced to focus on the actual kind of merit of the business. So kind of remove the hype about it, is because COVID essentially made everyone kind of flash forward into the future overnight in terms of everything digital, everything remote, all the trends were going anyways. So it helped us to ensure that we're reframing what we're doing to make sense not only in today but in tomorrow, and making sure that it's fundamentally sound and not caught up in some silly hype cycle that gives it some long-term legs. So I look at the fact that we did close as a good point of validation that not only did it make sense before, but it actually made sense before. So it was definitely a strange experience for sure. So everything was virtual, and everyone was trying to figure it out at the time, because this was just in the beginning of that. Now people are used to, perma Zoom, but that was pretty unique. And when we closed, I remember having drinks over Zoom, which was just weird for me. I was sitting here, and this is actually my home office, but it's also a closet. So I was literally in my closet drinking alcohol. It was just a strange experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange for us VCs too, because we can't make you sign the term sheet before we leave the room, because you could just end the Zoom session and we're done.
Right.
So tactics don't really work either.
Yeah.
Morgan, Tim, and Andrew.
Did they say, "Oh, sorry, Karan, bad Wi-Fi," and they just sort of click off?
It doesn't even have to be bad Wi-Fi. I think the founder just leave the Zoom room. It's like, we're not going to be the victims of these tactics. But Andrew, Morgan, and Tim, would love to hear your thoughts about how you're building the company. Are there any assumptions that you had when you started the company that may have gotten changed as a result of going through COVID, specifically as it pertains to hiring or having a co-located team versus a geographically dispersed team? How are you thinking about building the company? Tim, you want to kick us off there?
I think it was maybe a week before COVID really started to take hold that I sat the team down and said, everyone, we need you in the office, because we're a new company, we're growing fast, and we want to be close so that all these good conversations can happen. And then COVID hit, and certainly made us reflect on that. I still believe that we need to be close together, especially certain groups of people. But we've been able to keep innovation happening within the organization, but we maybe bend the rules a little bit and have people in the office a little more than others do. But we are in Edmonton, where COVID numbers up until the last week have been fairly low. And so we still have kind of kept everyone together. But it's absolutely opened up my mind to having more remote workers that we before would not have entertained.
Morgan?
I think a couple things. I mean, Andrew and I were spending a lot of time on the road, but I was the only remote worker. I was based in Los Angeles, and the rest of the team was in Vancouver. And so the early stages of COVID actually selfishly, I felt very close to the team, because we were spending much more time on Zoom together as an entire unit as we had been previously. But I think the thing that was interesting to me is Andrew definitely likes being in the office. I love being in the office when I'm in Vancouver. The developers on our team wanted to be in the office even more than we did. And we discovered that very quickly into COVID, which, if you were going to ask me to have a sort of a hypothesis pre-COVID, who the least likely to want to be in the office cohort of our team would be, it would be the devs. But they really love being together. And they made it very clear from sort of month one that as soon as we could get back to being in a physical space together, that was something they wanted. But for the 3-4 months there where we couldn't be, the team was pretty resilient. Everyone moved sort of systems online really quickly and processes, and just became, I think, better communicators than we could have imagined. Checking in the morning, checking in the evening, and just hopefully not filling their days with too much bureaucracy, but making sure that everyone still felt in sync. And so I think that's the takeaway for me, is just COVID was a major wrench in everybody's sort of life, but the team was really resilient when it came to getting their work done and finding new ways to be effective communicators, even though it was a first for almost the entire team to go fully remote.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually amazing, as I've seen just in my career of being on the boards of these companies. I'm actually on the board of a company called Auth0 that had 800 employees across 45 different countries. And when I invested in them, one of the things, and they were very young, they were about 20 employees, 30 employees, but they were all fully distributed from the get-go. And one of the things that I learned from just doing diligence in the company was that all the customers, they might have their thoughts about, whether the product's good or bad. Most of them said it was good. But the one thing that everybody said was that their documentation and onboarding documentation is better than anybody else that they've ever seen. And it was one of those things where, it's true that with adversity comes your biggest strengths. that the company had to have great documentation, because one employee would sleep in India and the other employee would pick it up in Seattle, and they had to know where the other person left off. So I think this is a period where a lot of these companies like yourselves are learning to get more resilient and actually are going to put stuff in place. And maybe even culture is one of those examples of things where you put more focus on that you wouldn't have thought otherwise, because you can't just tap somebody on the shoulder. So I think it's really interesting that some of these observations are coming through. Dan, I'm curious. I think in your company, and I think even in Tim, your company, data obviously plays a big part in how you drive either new insights or new workflows and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about, because we are the data and analytics panel, how are you using data either to provide insights that people never really had before, or provide a sense of like workflow that people couldn't really initiate with previous tools and products? I'd love to hear how data is being leveraged in your sectors.
Yeah, for us, one of the decisions we did early on that I think was actually really helpful for us is making sure that we use our own product to its full potential. And the vision is that you use it to run your entire business. So it's our only app. What that means, though, is it does introduce a whole new paradigm where, and it's something that we've kind of put into even our company values, which is collaborating via data above all other mechanisms. So less email, less documents, less, frankly, even conversations, and more data. It's an interesting phenomenon to kind of go through that evolution. But the fact that we're all remote actually helped to accelerate that. Because it's very powerful when you kind of get adjusted to that new framework where you're literally talking through data as like an asynchronous communication mechanism. It's auditable, it's queryable, it's actionable, it's traceable. Like, it has all those benefits that that data gives over unstructured data. 'Cause I'm talking about obviously structured data here. It's been a great kind of point of validation, and helps us get our head around what it's like to work in the new world that we can share with our customers as well.
That's great. Tim?
For us, I think, when we talk to organizations and trying to improve their workforce productivity, it's all about getting the next right action and making sure there's no gap between what they're doing now and what's next. And so bridging that knowledge gap is all about data. Like, how do you scale with the gap between what they know and what they need to know? And so a lot of that is coming into our design of our product, how we show content, how they interact with content, and then how the next piece of content is going to be delivered to them. And so just really thinking that through, making sure that the knowledge gap is attended to with technology and data, not just from sort of logic, but leaning more into machine intelligence to support it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that we think about is that the people on these store or warehouse floors, they don't have all the information to make great decisions. And so how do we pipe in the information, the business metrics? So an example is you're using too much shrink wrap on your shipping, and it's just like your site is spending 30% more. All you have to do is show that to a worker, and they're probably going to adjust. It's a pretty simple change. And so piping in those business metrics is a great way to use the data. They have lots of data, but how do we get this into the hands of those that could actually make changes? So that's kind of the way we think about it, and leveraging the data to create the action and outcomes you're hoping for.
Got it. So Andrew, Morgan, I'm curious about your assumptions in beatapp. So obviously you have a pretty large aspiration of killing Nielsen. We all got that, and you knew that it was broken when you started the company. So that's a fact that you probably just admitted that was a fact. I'm curious about, after you started the company to now, what has been one or two big learnings for you, stuff that you may have not known when you started the company, but now do, that might have affected the way you think about either building the company or your assessment of the market? Is there a learning that you can point to in the last year or so that you think affected your outlook on either beatapp as a company or the space that you're going after?
So in short, yes, obviously there's always learnings. I think one of the benefits, I'll say my piece first, I know Morgan might jump on here, but the two biggest things that I think I've found the best learning for me has been, first, how much the artists really appreciate what we're doing, because we started so much on the label side. And what's interesting is, you know, I spent, before this, I was in another company that was so boring. You just didn't even want to tell people at a party you were doing it. Like, people just turn their head and ask somebody else what they're doing. And so for once, it's so cool to have artists calling you, or meet an artist and them say to you how cool this is, because it's such a giant gap in their own knowledge that they don't get a chance to see. And they're excited that their labels are participating. And sometimes Morgan and I joke that we went through years of this struggle just to meet our favorite artist, Garth Brooks. You know, like, we did all this just to meet him, so he'll think we're cool. And so it's so like, that's the part I think that was the coolest for me, and what I think is what I didn't expect, and kind of helps drive us. But I will say I feel very fortunate in the fact that Morgan and I went to grad school together. We really approached this. We spent 18 months in stealth mode. We weren't sure if we could build the tech. That was like miracle one. And so the next step, we knew there was like 3 miracles: tech, labels, DSPs. And I think along the way, that actually gave us this opportunity, Morgan and I, to strategize and look at all the dead bodies that are there in the graveyard of music tech, and where they went wrong, and interview those founders, and really come at it like almost like a macro consultant level, and come in and say from the very beginning, if this technology works, what is the path that we're going to have moving forward? Where did everybody else fall short? Why did they fall short? Diagnosing those problems, clustering those issues, and really having a strategy for when the next thing occurred. And I think that time you don't often get in a startup. Like, often you're running and shooting at the same time. And because we had so much development to do, it also gave Morgan and I a ton of time to look under those rocks and hopefully have less surprises along the way. But those are my 2 biggest things, I would say, like, how much the artists love it, how much it's really gone to the next level, and how excited I am not to be embarrassed by working in a tech company.
That is good. I think on a very specific, sort of maybe shocking point to me, we knew that it took a long time for any rights holder to, you know, audit distribution. I didn't appreciate just how long that was. So we heard 18 months to 36 months is a range for conducting a single audit, and that a major label might have, you know, a dozen or more audits going on at any given point. And we just start thinking about like the G&A associated with that. Never mind the recovery of the actual, you know, the actual lost revenue. Like, that sort of blew my mind. And I know auditing is not super glamorous, but it was just interesting to hear it sort of from Andrew's point. We had some time to get to know the customers really, really well. And time again, you sort of hear this same sticky point, which is that just gathering the data to conduct an exhaustive audit takes a year plus. And it just doesn't make sense in a digitally distributed product. It made maybe more sense in the physical distribution days, but not now. So.
Got it. Megan, either this is a very shy audience or everybody's questions have already been answered, because I haven't seen any question on the chat channel, even though I offered Yen's private karaoke performance to the first question. So I'm not sure if I can.
Karan, I think that was the reason you're not getting any questions.
Well, I waited a long time.
Offer a treat, not a punishment.
All right. Well, I'll keep my hopes high and expectations low. But if anybody has questions, please don't be shy. Otherwise, I'm going to start calling upon people. That always works, right? Anyway,
Isaac.
I'll keep asking questions, and then until something shows up. If not, then I will call upon people. I'm curious to hear, you know, this is one of those things where now we've talked about the upside and all the stuff that could happen that takes you to greatness. As you think about sort of going to sleep tonight and the next week and the next year and things like that, and you think about the team building, the product, the market, all this stuff, all the different variables that you either have control over or don't have control over, what is the one thing that you worry about that could potentially put you on a trajectory that you wouldn't want? So if for example, beatapp doesn't get to greatness, or smart access doesn't get escape velocity, what do you think the one thing could be that causes that? And what is that? Is that the thing that keeps you up at night, or is there something else?
Can jump in on this one if you want. I think for us, Andrew mentioned that there were sort of 3 things we needed to do, and the third one was always the most elusive, which is, you know, convince the DSPs, the streaming services, to integrate our software. because at the end of the day, they're our partner, and we have to sort of be integrated into their tech, and that's a heavy lift. There are some lessons from history that, you know, in the space that we've looked at, where SoundScan, which Andrew mentioned early on, had a very similar, probably existential risk, which is in the early 90s. They had to look at big box retail and all the record chains and say, hey, you should do basically the same thing, use our point of sale system to gather sales data, which historically had been less than reliable. So there's some, I guess, comfort in knowing that companies in a similar space have managed to get over that distribution hurdle and actually integrate their tech and be able to partner with distribution. But that is certainly the thing that keeps me up at night. And we've got a number of different sort of ways we approach that problem, ranging from, you know, I guess, carrot to a little bit more stick. But for the most part, it's very much like, you know, we know we have to be a good partner. And we also know that that's sort of a big existential reality. And so, yeah, that would be the one if I had to think of one. But we're, you know, to that point, not to end on a low note, the first DSP that will go live later this month is 65 million monthly active users, which is no insignificant feat. And it didn't require any sort of cajoling from the rights holder side. They did it because they want to be a better partner for their rights holders. And so that gives us a ton of hope and optimism for what we can build.
Got it.
I think for us, it is definitely just thinking about how do we get sort of that nonlinear growth? Like, you know, we just keep adding, once we kind of, you know, start getting good sales motion, start adding retailers, you know, there might be 50, 75, maybe 150 million revenue could come from all these retailers, but how do you really start pushing it on beyond that? And how do we, and we have lots of ideas around that, but there's a lot of hopes and guessing on how we're going to take it from just a room full of salespeople, really just making it all happen, to something that really pushes the product up into that sort of next level. And so we think about that a lot now. We have some great thinking on it, but there's still that gap between now and that time where we can start to implement those things. So for us, it's that nonlinear growth. How do we tap into what we're building and how it grows? So.
Got it. So sounds like all of you don't need to answer the same question, unless, Dan, if you think you have something that keeps you up at night too, besides potentially little kids. That's been the case for me, but go ahead.
Yes, I got 3 young boys, so that's definitely one of them, plus animals, plus other things. But there's probably 2 things that are kind of top of mind. One is just with everything being remote, like we had an office, we actually just moved into a bigger space, and then COVID hit, and now we don't have an office. We let it go, and we have no concrete plans to really ever return, so all virtual, but we haven't committed to that till the end of time. But as we're hiring people, do we continue to hire where they're within commute range or not, is what we're actually starting to let go of. So fingers crossed that we don't revert back in the future, but I don't think that's going to be the case. So that's one thing that I just worry about, and kind of building the culture. We are growing the company in this new distributed world versus a company that may already have a culture. And the other thing that I worry about is how to generate demand. Like today, we sell to enterprise organizations like big banks, and you know, the old channels aren't what they were 6 months ago for generating demand. So it's definitely an opportunity to think very differently around how to command the attention of people when you know, there's a friggin' pandemic. People are distracted. But so that's definitely something that we're doing some experiments on, but it's interesting because we don't have the answers.
Yeah, now I'm guessing a lot of companies around the world right now are thinking about culture building, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's an active topic of discussion in every boardroom, at least for me, which is how we'll be thinking about culture. And even if you weren't, then you better be thinking about it now. So that's great.
Yeah.
So it looks like Brandon from Ridge has a question for all of you, and he's asking, when you've been building out the product of the company to date, what's been the most surprisingly friction-filled step, or areas where you would have guessed there'd be better tooling, but doesn't exist today? Any of you have an opinion on that, or something to offer? Anything that you found was harder than you thought it was going to be as you were building out the product on your end?
I think for us, it's positioning and the way we've built the product. Kind of our first customers kind of told us who we are, and then when we take it to market, it's not necessarily the same thing to other customers. And so we've really struggled trying to get that positioning nailed, and because we really just kind of took off with solving a problem for them, and we didn't think about competitors until after we had raised some money. Then we looked back, and so just seeing where we fit in the world that we play in, and that's been a challenge. But we get closer every day. And I just had a call with a very large retailer this afternoon, and it was really positive. And they were starting to pick up on a theme that we were testing that we thought would be one that would be meaningful to retailers. So.
Got it.
One that I thought was very difficult for us was on the technology side. So when we first started this, our other co-founder, Poria, we had no idea if we could build the technology that was needed. Like the industry had really said they wanted it to be blockchain. Blockchain is historically slow. We hated saying blockchain. Like I've been investing in this space around blockchain since 2012. So the last thing I wanted to do was start talking about blockchain to other investors and like how things went. But the reality was like we had no idea if we could build the technology. And there was a good year there when Morgan and I were asking ourselves every day if this is even possible. Like how are we going to track 1 million transactions per second per region when blockchain just doesn't do it? The amount of algorithms and R&D and prototyping and all the things we had to do to get there. I mean, almost every day I just thought it would never happen. It just felt like an endless time pit that maybe we could never accomplish. And to me, that was the hardest point. I think when I thought about it, I'm like, sure, we'll get some devs together. It might be some difficulty, but we'll get it done. I think 6 or 8 months in, I started thinking this might be impossible. And it wasn't until we had that breakthrough where I felt like, wow, we can actually have a real business here, because to that point, I had no idea if we could build the technology required.
Got it. I'm curious to hear your points of view on a topic that comes up quite a bit in our early stage discussions with companies for whom data is such a big asset. And it's this constant tension between early monetization to show that people are willing to pay for the product or service that you have to offer versus handing it out for free with a freemium product or a free trial or whatever have you, to be able to get that ubiquitous data that is statistically significant, and then drives a lot more insights that makes the product and service even better. So this whole freemium product motion loop. I'm wondering if any of your, and I'm not sure what the business model is for most of you, but I heard a couple folks say that you sell top down to large retailers and things like that. But does anybody have a freemium product strategy, or how do you think about this sort of tension between charging for the product versus giving it out for free to collect more data if data is the eventual asset?
I wouldn't say we're a freemium product, but we definitely give free trials. The big trouble for us in the music industry is every label's not really sure. So the way it works is there's like hundreds of DSPs, right? And a label might have a direct deal with 12 or 15 or 20 of them and distribute through somebody else for the remaining couple, 100. And so what's difficult is that you don't really know until the data's live and you're checking against it how much the uplift is. It makes it hard for us to charge an annualized contract because the label's concerned, like what if they charge us 15% of streaming revenue, but they only generate 9% uplift? So what we've done is we've gone in and offered the pilot for free to set the benchmark of what the value created is, with a clear time box of it being 1 quarter or 3 months. And there needing to be a commercialized contract that's a multi-year enterprise licensing deal. And so it's interesting because it's not really freemium, but it is, we take all the risks, the streaming and processing data, the cost for that, the fact that they take an additional 3 months typically to pay, or 90 days. So really we're funding them for 6 months per DSP. And that's a pretty large burden to carry. But short of doing that, I just don't believe we could get, like, knowing the industry as intimately as we do, I do not believe they would make a move that they have to pay for it before they see the value. And so we made the decision to just over fundraise in the beginning, even if that meant a little bit more dilution than we wanted, to being able to turn these DSPs on so that we could, streaming services, that's what DSP is, just sorry, to turn them on so that way we could prove, look, in 3 months, we've made you $10 million. Like if we're showing you we can make you 10 million, you should easily write us a check for $1 million if you want this, gravy train to keep running. And that's kind of been our approach, but that does come with a cost because it's free and there's a lot of, data requirements and costs around that.
Gotcha. Tim, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like initially we haven't had a freemium model, but some of our new product features could probably allow for it. So for this quarter, one of the OKRs is really to investigate a frictionless on-ramp for enterprise, so they could get on, play with the software and test it. And so it's something that's kind of in our sights. It's always complicated with large organizations because of so many people that have to buy into it to give it for free. But it's something we're exploring because ultimately we want to own every connection to the store floor or warehouse floor. If we can be the conduit, that's what we want to be. And so getting more connection points out into the world is a key part of our concept. But we haven't built that way, but we're certainly exploring that opportunity.
Got it. So just switching gears a little bit onto another topic that is near and dear to me, which is hiring. And how are you all, given what's going on and where the environment that we're in, what tactics and strategies are working for you as you're trying to hire and grow and hire the best, and especially in cases where you can't meet them in person and stuff? Is there one or two things that are working really well for you? And if so, it'd be great to share with the broader team here. Are there avenues?
One of the things that we're finding, and it worked against us in the early days, but is working for us now, is like if you have a big, bold vision, like ours is ultimately the kind of the destruction of how you think about applications and giving people control over their data. It's one of those things that sounds a little bit crazy at first, so people may be hesitant if it's 2 or 3 people, but if you have some traction, you have some real customers and you're getting some growth, and that vision can really work towards you to the point where most of our talent is actually individuals targeting us, which I remember when that started, that was an amazing feeling. So just really selling that vision, and that's a great way to avoid attrition and whatnot, because they're there because of the cause. So we've it was kind of an accident that we discovered that we definitely use to our advantage more so. It's not so much because everyone's virtual or not, but definitely selling the vision has been helpful for us.
We've had a really easy time recruiting. Honestly, I think it's because we've done a couple things to lean into it, but we're in a really fun space. Like, people love music, everyone loves music. And one of the things that we've done early is asking artists that were in our network, like pretty big artists, to come and start talking to our team. So we do these things like Mentors Mondays, where they come in and tell the team how great they're doing and how much it means to them as an artist that these things are occurring. We do private streaming concerts with our employees with some of these large artists, and they're extremely excited to hear new music first, get feedback, like really feel like the artist cares about what they're doing. And I think because it's such a cool space, and because it's sexy, it's a lot sexier than other maybe companies, we've had just a ton of applications. I think we had 5,400 people apply to our job postings inside of a week. And so what we started doing was just creating databases for that, asking them to pre-fill out other information so that we could have them on standby. And then as we started scaling, like we doubled our team this year, it became easy to go to the database, say this is exactly the type of person we need, pull those people out, and then just schedule interviews with those people. And if it's a code challenge, give them specific code challenges. If it's something more core to our business, really go through that. But honestly, I think that we've been very fortunate. And the more that our team shares these Mentor Mondays or like tells all their friends, we've had a lot of people coming from large established companies that just want to do something that matters and do something that's cool. And I think that we've been really fortunate. I could definitely say that's not been the case at other companies I've been at. So I felt really good about that for sure.
That's great. Kind So it doesn't look like we have any more questions. So, and I think I've asked most of what I wanted to ask you guys. Maybe what I'll do is have you guys wrap up by, if there's one thing that you want everybody to take away about you or the company, one thing you want everybody to remember, this is your chance to kind of share it with the C100 community. And beyond that, if folks have questions, just go ahead and put it in the chat channel. I'll make sure that those get answered as well. But let's take it from whoever wants to go first. All right, well, in that case, Dan, why don't you go first? If there's one thing you want everybody to take away about you and Cinchy.
Sure. Am I able to share my screen for 10 seconds?
Yeah, go for it. I think Yen might have to give you control, right,
Yeah.
Yen? Yen, can you give Dan control of the screen for a second?
Why don't we go with someone else, and then I will figure it out.
Okay.
I was
Well,
trying to wait out a screaming child there, so my apologies for not jumping in. And actually, going back to your first question about co-CEOs, what's the advantage? It means you can go on mute and Slack the other one to say, take the next question. My kids are screaming in the background. So that's why co-CEOs works. You know, I think that the takeaway for us is we have a couple of big milestones on the horizon. I alluded to one, the first sort of major DSP going live. And I think next year is going to be a real inflection point for the business for all the reasons Andrew said. You know, it's a big sort of upfront lift to prove the value, but once we do, those customer contracts are significant. So I think for the C100 community, just know, you know, tail end of this year and coming into next year, we're going to have some exciting news to share, and we're hopefully going to be on a trajectory that sets us up for our next round of fundraising. And so just, you know, don't shy away from our emails when we come knocking, because we're coming early next year.
all right, sounds great. Tim, you want to go, and then we'll give Dan control of the screen, unless you want to share the screen too.
No, I don't have a screen share.
Okay.
I think that probably a little bit similar to beatapp. We are really close to just kind of getting to that next stage where we've our revenue could really surge here in the next few months, and we're going to look to grow and be quite aggressive. We have some new things coming out within the product that really position us quite well to take a lot of market share and expand, where others just are, I think, a little bit older in the way they see the world. And so, you know, what they've made complicated, we've made simple. And so we're getting close to really hitting it really straight and getting it figured out. So that's what I would leave you with.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, let me share.
Good to go.
Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay. One of our values is to show, not tell, something that we talk a lot about. So the one thing I want to leave you with is like a 15-second demo. What you're seeing, if I zoom in, is our company's brain. That's all of our knowledge. So we use our own platform to run our entire business, all aspects of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can ask any question of any particular piece of data, whether it's about shareholders, investors, invoices, employees, performance reviews, compensation, conversions, literally anything, and get an instant real-time answer. And I can save that question and share the question with others who can get a real-time answer. And that's how we build that collaborative intelligence, because everyone can basically throw questions into the mix. And this is how we run our business. So for example, I can search for anything. If I want to look for invoices, as an example, I can locate it. It's like Google Maps for data. And not only can I see kind of a visual representation of all of our knowledge, but I can even go down and actually see and even change the data, where the only limitation is that I need access. So there's a quick little show and tell, but literally all of our information is available in a single unified interface.
Wow, that is impressive. And is that, you built that UI and everything yourself as well, or is that third party?
No, that's Cinchy. So we built it. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing. Well, great. Well, I think that we're almost out of time, so I just wanted to thank all of you guys on that note to sharing your day, sharing your evening, afternoon with us, and thanks for sharing everything about your company as well. Thanks to everybody else for attending. I hope Everybody stays safe, stays healthy, wear a mask. If you're in the US and you have the ability to, please vote. Otherwise, stay connected to the Canadian community everywhere you go.